So let's get started. My name is Markus Backman. I actually live in the northern part of Sweden, and normally we have snow this time of year. This year not really. We have ice, so it's more or less as depressing as is here. It's dark. I haven't seen the sun forever. That's kind of it at the moment. But I've been working at Swedbank for quite a long time, actually 23 years, if someone is counting. So I basically directly came from the university and happened to come to Swedbank because I actually graduated exactly when the IT bubble burst. So I was happy to get a job. I started as a developer, that's kind of my route. Then I started more of the architecture, and now I'm the enterprise domain architect for technologies, which says more or less nothing besides a lot of words. But my architectural responsibility is everything from data centers up to application development platforms that the banks, all the teams and developers are building solutions upon. And we will talk about one of those offering, and that's the Andromeda platform. So we'll actually start there. So just to give you some context what it is, and then I will switch about why we did it and what we've learned and so on. So we'll get a bit of a deep dive into different parts. So I will not actually dwell that much on the technology. But you will get at least a walkthrough. So this is the amazing definition of the Andromeda platform. Developer-friendly application development platform based on microservice architecture with managed service for developing, deploying, and operating cloud-native application. Also very nice wordings. But the thing here is that when it comes to being a bank, being a large organization, you get into the trouble with having a lot of teams that need to do things. And I would never say for a startup or a small company, go microservices, because it's not that fun. It's actually stressing quite a lot on top. But as there are many teams and you actually need them to be able to operate in their own speed, you're gonna need some form of splitting, because you can't have one monolithic application with a few hundred teams doing changes. So there are drawbacks, and I'm very open to that as well. But if you look at the technology, you will see that there's nothing magical at all. So we have a container platform, basically Kubernetes, but it runs on OpenShift and AKS. So more or less agnostic on the underlying Kubernetes flavor. The applications on Andromeda microservices are run on inside, of course, a platform-provided container, very slimmed down due to reducing all the vulnerability of attack surfaces. And when it comes to all our microservices, they are run out inside the AVM. So we are historically quite a big Java shop. Then built on Spring Boot, nothing very strange there as well if you talk about the Java thing. Standard is that you develop in Java, but there are teams working in Kotlin, and that actually works. IDE you choose, that's not important. And of course you can do development on Windows and Mac computer as a developer. We use Git. Someone surprised on version control in Git? No. Then of course that the platform provides a standard pipeline. So that means that all the applications on this platform runs through the same pipeline. And in that it enforces conventional commits, trunk-based deployment, and automated testing, and as much as things it can actually push down. And of course the pipeline works towards the Artifactory to push all the artifacts and so on. And then SonarQube for source code scanning. But it's just a set of tools and technology that fits the organization. So you can build these type of things on Python if that's more fun or whatever. That's not just what fits the organization. So this is then just what fitted Swedbank. This is the picture that I tend to show. So at the bottom we have a lot of development services which you use during the development. For instance, the pulsar there is basically CLI to be able to generate an empty application to bootstrap yourself. You have a portal for managing your application, deploying them, and so on. Then you have a lot of libraries that you can include into your application that the platform team owns and operates. So, and then you have the platform services. That is then things that are run by the platform team that you can utilize. So for instance, like an in-memory data grid, Hazelcast in this case, if you need to have some caching with low latency between your pods and so on. Of course, all the things with observability is, of course, also something that is provided by the platform. And on top is the things that the building blocks that you build. So now we're talking about let's build a payment order service or a card processing thingy. Then we're talking about these experience, core, and worker, and we'll actually shortly just jump into those. And these are the actual smallest deployable things on Andromeda. So you can create a core application. It's basically there to expose APIs for other systems to communicate. So normal REST APIs, nothing very strange. And you can, of course, have a database or data store behind. You can connect to all other type of downstream services. You can push event, Kafka, MQ, or different things. And of course, use a lot of platform services for you be able to monitoring and operating it, and caching and so on. And feature flags. You can use quite a lot of things then. But this is system to system. Then when we expose things to the front and the UI part, then we actually have an experience application. So it's then we're talking about more or less the back end for the front end things that we are exposing to them. Otherwise, they are very, very similar. It's just they serve traffic from front end. And then the last little small part is just a worker application. Doesn't have any API. It just does things asynchronously. Can be schedule things. It can be waking up when an event is happening, processing that, and calling some other system to do something. So that's kind of the three building blocks that all people are building, no matter if it's card payments or the channels or whatever. So this is just the technology, which means that if you look at Andromeda here, you can more or less build whatever you want on top of it. It's not really bank specific, more than the technology and the set of tools are, of course, chosen based on what Swedbank has for competence and needs. But that just you will have more insight on how to work with the platform in the next talk. But then one question can be, why build a platform for microservices? And the thing is that we were kind of seeing it for a long time that teams were developing things, but it was very fragmented. They started choosing their own type of technology and so on. And that's really fun. You start with things, but then as a bank and all the compliance things start hitting you, and also thinking about, I need to actually monitoring this. Okay, how to do the logging? Where should that be centrally handled and so on? So the burden becomes quite high for each individual team if they start from the ground up. We actually looked at the market to see can you procure something that is good enough? We had a long talk with one vendor, was at least we did a proof of concept and so on. And I'm really, really happy that didn't play out as good as because that company has unfortunately not in business anymore. I was actually meeting a bank in Holland beginning of this year, and that they had got all in on that vendor, and now they were sitting there with a lot of things they needed to manage without support and future development on that platform. So that's not fun either. But the problem here is when you start thinking about how to build an application in a larger company, and with all the different compliance needs as a bank and so on, it starts to become very, very hard to procure something, because you can just, of course, buy technology, but all the things about your processes and everything else, you still need to add on top. So that's why the decision was to actually create an opinionated platform to be able to accelerate people. And why, I will say the word compliance here a number of times, but this is kind of the landscape of being a bank. I haven't read all this. I don't want to read them all. But there are a lot of these regulations, and then unfortunately operating in 4 EU countries doesn't make life easier as a company. And there are even more. So this is just a part of them. But each of these might say certain things that each team needs to comply to, as we as an organization need to comply to. So what I've been pushing quite hard for a long time is that the teams that are delivering the platforms to other teams to build services on them, they need to take responsibility to make these type of things easier. And this is kind of what I'm talking about when I mean that. So, for instance, when you want to do a change in production, we have quite a lot of regulations around that because we are critical to the society. So I completely understand that. But that also means that all teams need to understand every part of this if they should implement it themselves. And that's not really feasible. That's why we say that the platforms should try to take the burden so that the development teams can focus on business functionality. So trying to do that type of split of responsibility. So how do you handle incident management? How do you break the glass to actually get to production during an incident? That is something that the platform team should enable the teams to be as efficient as possible. Patching, vulnerability, backup and disaster recovery things. Not every team should invent that wheel themselves. Security logging, observability, of course. Financial management, no one really cares about from the development team, but there are other people that care about who is spending the money. Self-service, of course, pushing that. How we work with our network, zoning it, making sure that the platform more or less make sure that each application don't need to understand everything. They have chosen the reasonable default for everyone. So for 80%, you don't need to care about it. And when it comes to actually having one platform, is that a platform can equal scale, and that actually equals uniformity in the applications. And there is actually a good thing of that. But I also want to emphasize you should not force every team to do exactly one thing. There should be a bit of engineering freedom, because otherwise you will lose the developers. So don't try to say that each, for instance, we had another platform existing in Sweden that said when you write Java, you need to have an instant variable must start with an I when you program. That was actually a rule that people were following up during code reviews. And that's not what a code review for me is. So that type of really strong enforcement of stupid things is not the right thing. But we were in the red and blue thing there on our container platform. People were deploying containerized applications, but they needed to sort everything out. So observability, manageability, automation, pipelines, and everything. And that's where Andromeda then came in and said, okay, here you build on top of that. It's being deployed on the container platform. That, of course, uses network storage and a lot of other things beneath it. And another thing that is important when it comes to being a platform provider is very clearly state what is the platform's responsibility and accountability, and what is your responsibility and accountability when building things on top of that. So Andromeda very clearly says, we don't care about your applications, the platform team. That's your responsibility to develop, build, run, and operate. They will give all the tooling and trying to make life easier for you, but it's still your responsibility. If you push something to production, you need to sort out the mess. So no one will come and save you on that side. Yes, so bit of story. When we actually started this, we set up a few principles. Team independency, that's why we ended up with microservices. Making sure that each team can push to production by themselves. You will still have team dependency because of one team relies on another team's API, and that you will still need to sort out in the organization. But doesn't mean that all 100 teams need to be dependent to go together into production. Developer experience. Let's see if the guys are happy on the developer experience later on. It's always interesting. But developers should actually think this platform helps them. And another thing, we wanted each team to actually deploy to production every day. This was an interesting first conversation with our process office. And they said, no. Why? Is there a need? When we had the conversation with the head of the unit, she said, but we don't have that much business features that we need to deploy to customers every day. No, but we need to do technical things every day. And getting teams to that is a culture change, not only the technology to actually make it happen. I wanted the platform to scale all in the bank, so it doesn't matter what home market you're serving, Sweden or any of the Baltic countries. This is the platform to build applications on. And the last part, compliant by design. And we will run through some of these things around the compliant thing. And one of the first stories is basically the daily deployments here. Because when we started this very late in 2019, and when we started having the conversations, was that we have a change process. So when you need to go to production, you need to create a change request. And that change request, you need to write a lot of things in manually. What does the change include? Please fill in text. Have you tested? Where is your test protocol? And all those amazing questions that process people love to create. That hopefully someone will look at to verify that you have written something good and that you are a good citizen. And of course, in the end, that came up to, okay, this is a risky thing. Then you might end up in the change approval board and sitting in a meeting with a lot of people that might ask you 2-3 questions, and depending on if they have gotten their coffee this morning, they might say you're allowed to go to production or not. That didn't really fly, because we said every day you should create one of these change requests. People will not do it. So we spent, and I think that's where my first gray hair started to come, basically 1.5 years together with Process Office to define a new change type that is now called automated change. And you're only allowed to use that change type for a pre-approved pipeline. And there is a lot of requirements on that. So for instance, each change needs to have pull request approvals, and it needs to be approved by other people than committing the code. It needs to have automated testing, it needs to have security scanning, it needs to have an audit trail all through from commit all the way to production. And also possibility both automatic and manual rollback with ease. But that led to that we actually implemented the first pipeline that was approved for Andromeda, and we started rolling that out. We started with the first teams that were started using Andromeda. They didn't need to do this manual change request. Everybody was happy. Process Office was really happy because they said, now we actually have control over things, not just thinking we have control, because we know that the pipelines are doing, and we audit the pipeline and not audit it every change. But the problem was that in April of 22, there was a large incident happening at Swedbank. It didn't hit the Baltic market, it just hit the Swedish market. What was the actual thing that happened for the customer were that a lot of customers just one evening found out they had minus account on all their accounts, minor balances. That's not very fun when you're going to buy your groceries and declined, and well, cash no one has anymore. So that wasn't really fun. Trust me, we were in all newspapers. And after that, of course, our financial authorities comes and says, hi, that wasn't a really nice thing you did there. Can we actually do an investigation of what happened here? So this is the official things, and we actually got a fine of 85 million euro on that. Just so we know here, it's then was one software engineer pressing the deploy button on a system that caused this. That person still works at Swedbank. It was not his fault. It's the process and the implementation of it that actually made him in this situation. Still, I have talked to him. He doesn't like this newspaper articles. It's not fun to cause this type of incident and also the fine for the company, but it's not his fault. So FSS says basically that the investigation of the Swedbank did not follow internal procedures when changing its system, and that did not have suitable control mechanism in place to ensure it followed internal procedures. So we have a change process document. A change should be created. They should be evaluate risk of it and so on. Here they have the possibility of bypassing that completely. And that was what we got the fine for. Not that we had the incident. So very clearly difference there. But when this happened, what is the natural reaction of a large corporate? Stop. Whatever you're doing, no changes to production. We need to be stable and show to the market that we have total control. What happens when you take off and freeze period? Have you just been sitting and not doing any changes that is just stacking up and waiting? No, of course not. So as soon as you press the button, now it's allowed, that's the riskiest period you have as a corporation. Then a lot of changes goes through. So this is kind of the anti-pattern of the reaction. But this is kind of normal reaction. And this, of course, happened here as well. So we had our pipeline. People were be able to deploy. It created automated changes. Everything was fine. We were compliant with everything. We will not get the 850 million SEK fine based on it. But I felt like this now will increase every talk about the change control in the bank. So then I were sitting and thinking, we have an interesting conflict here, and we need to do something about it. So we have governance, risk, compliance, and audit, all those people we love as software engineers, and we have the software engineers. So software engineers, I just want to get my features out, so I just can continue on the next one. But then, of course, we have the FSAs that actually require us to have good control of changes. And the software engineers, you say, trust me, I never introduce any change. And as soon as something happens, then the organization says, trust no one, in a freeze period. And the thing here is, like, if we would allow governance, risk, compliance, and audit to be in the driving seat, we will end up with every change need 12 weeks evidence review. During that 12 weeks, you will continue working, and the next 12-week change will be bigger than the first one. And that will just continue forever and ever. Because the next will not be 12 weeks, because it's a bigger change and harder evidence, and they will just, until you will not be able to deploy anything. We can't have this either, having software engineers just, I'm going to press a production all the time, whatever I'm doing, I don't really care. I worked on my machine. Well, didn't work in production. Okay. So this is where most corporation ends up with, coming to the subjective change process, talking about CAB meetings, where you then come in and describe your change and the risk level of it and get an approval for it. What I wanted to push here is, like, I want to actually move to more automated governance when it comes to these changes. And of course, we had full audit trail of every change pushed through Andromeda to production, so we will not get the fine. But it was always that the discussion. What is the risk of each change? We know that from all research, smaller changes that you deploy to production is less risky. Still, a one-liner configuration change might still break everything. We can ask Cloudflare and others about that experience. So we had our pipelines pushing through deployments. From that, we got a lot of metrics. One standardized pipeline, a lot of application deployments. So from that, we all could actually see quite a lot of data. So then I was sitting and saying, okay, now I have a lot of data. I just exported it to our amazing tool Excel and started playing around and see, do we see any patterns there? And what is high risk or not? And then we went and presented that to Process Office and said, like, we can create some form of scoring model. And we can say there's a cutoff point, saying, if you are a good citizen on how you develop things on Andromeda, well, you will end up with minor limited risks and never major critical. But if you end up with a large risky change, you will end up in CAB meeting. And I said, that sounds very good. They liked the idea. Then I asked, can we use CAB meeting as a scare tactic? So basically say, if you don't actually follow the good practices, then you will end up in a CAB meeting, because no one wants to end up there. And said, absolutely, we don't want to be in CAB meetings either. Are the ones sitting in the CAB meeting saying they don't want to be there either. So that's an interesting learning. So we actually then started with this and starting tracking it, sending out some emails after the fact first. You were still deploying, but then you got an email back saying what the actual scoring was, and that started with tweaking and so on. Now it's part and actually pre-calculated before you do deployment, so you can actually see it. But we have never enforced stopping a deployment, because the fun part is that people are actually changing the way they are working. So this is how it actually looks when you go to deployment today. This is a deployment of version 0.51.2 of a team here. And there is a lot of pre-calculated. As long as it's green, it's fine. you can be stopped for deployment, but that isn't really, and we haven't pushed anyone to a CAB meeting. That has not been needed, because as soon as we started tracking this and actually following up, we saw quite a large degrees of based on the scoring models. So if you see, like, it's 73% degrees of major. So this was the end of 24. After that, we changed the scoring models. I can't really compare to now. But more or less, just making it visible, saying smaller commits is better. You actually need automated test cases up to a certain level, and those normal good practices. You should have alerting. You should have a dashboard to be able to see things. Just pushing those things actually did quite good. Then I will now shift more on how to change the culture of all the teams that is working on the platform. And one of the engineers in the platform team said, oh, we have all these amazing metrics now going through the pipeline. So what can we do with that more than the boring risk things that I was the inventor of? He said achievements is more fun. So the teams, of course, get achievements based on how they are performing on the platform. And there is actually one achievement that were a bit funny this year. Was one team that deployed after 16 on Friday the 13th. As a software engineering team might not be the optimal deployment time, but to get an achievement, you can do whatever you want. Hopefully there was a very minor change pushing out late Friday afternoon. But last year, 24, we had one team that actually managed to have 150 deploy in a single month. That's way more than daily. So this is kind of showing that, okay, teams are getting it. So they got a special achievement called digital security, as the team actually is called digital security. So they were handcrafted. Now a few other teams have gotten this as well. 5 other teams. And another team then said, hold my beer. So this year they said 200 deployments, single months. And they continue, 250 deployments during a month. And lately they also managed to get 300. So this is just one team then deploying. They have 10 services, but they deploy every day, all 10 services. So that's stacking up quite fast. Another thing that, besides this is just gamification and fun, is that we also push the message through the organization. It's fun for the development teams with achievements and so on. And you still get your metric view, and this is, of course, a classic DORA, deployment frequency and lead time for changes and so on. But we also aggregate that up. So for instance, the team of the month is then aggregated up in the organization. So if a manager has 4 teams, all working on Andromeda, they will get the team of the month. With the statistics and everything, and a push for actually celebrate them. And we also summary on the organization, very, very high up. So this was actually, I think, from the channel organization. So 102 developers, 226 applications, 35 teams. But the fun part here, it takes on average 5 days, 8 hours, 8 minutes to deploy code changes to production. And that, for me, is kind of unseen in Swedbank previously. And this is on average. So that means that we are continuously pushing out things all the time. And you can think about, do we actually have so much changes that we are doing? Yes. And we also do this little generated things as well. Sorry. Now the sound, as we had. Yes, no, it was my computer. I will shift back. So.
I am thrilled to present the Achievement Award, Busy as a Bee, to your incredible team for an outstanding accomplishment. 25 to...
That didn't work. Then I need to do this one. Now we can see it as well.
Good morning, Baltic Customer Data Management. I am thrilled to present the Achievement Award, Busy as a Bee, to your incredible team for an outstanding accomplishment. 25 deployments in a single month on the Andromeda platform. Your dedication and hard work are truly out of this world, propelling us to new heights in the digital universe. With this award, you have earned 2,500 experience points, bringing your total to an impressive 85,201. Keep reaching for the stars and pushing boundaries. The galaxy is the limit for this exceptional team. Congratulations.
And of course, this is just using a large language model, because we all know this really good at creating bullshit, which it actually is. So it's basically, the prompt is act as Steve Jobs as an award ceremony for space theme and development platform, and here is the data. And yeah, and the picture is the APO, the product owner for the platform. So and then teams can actually get their own video awards as well. And here are some voices that we heard of people using it. So the first one I like, because then it's just showing that, okay, we can push changes faster to production and development process allows us. And development process is basically all the compliance about privacy, risk, and all the things that we need to talk about before we actually put out something new. And this is really good, because the technology and the culture isn't in the way. Now it's another process that is hindering people and teams to deliver. And that's really good from my side, because I'm sitting here on the technology side. Software engineers, really happy. And then I like the manager quote, my EMPS score went from -100 to +100. And that was nice for him. I think we should get some of his bonuses for that, because I don't think he actually did the change. And as you see, like, all this is also a bit of having a bit fun. And it's space themes for a reason, because you can actually tell stories and so on. So that was why the reason we chose with the Andromeda Galaxy and the space theme. And then during it was a couple of years ago, I bought a Lego rocket, and then of course I needed to create a small microcontroller, and so this is firing behind me when I'm sitting at work at home office each time someone deploys. Currently I'm getting more and more epileptic based on, especially when it's dark outside now, so my room is fun. And now I also have a LED strip behind that wooden board that is showing how many deployments the day, and it becomes greener and greener. So my wife says my office needs to be closed every night, because it's just glowing green at the moment, because it's so many deployments. And that led to that the chief product owner for the platform saw that during the meeting and said, oh, we need one in the HQ in Stockholm as well. So it's actually there now. It actually fires as well. And they will also have the videos playing, so you can walk by and see that. So this is just branding, fun, playing around. I think that's just part of changing culture of way of working as well. It's not just technology, it's not just processes and talking. It's definitely having fun at work as well. So now I talked a lot of things like what we did and how we approach certain things of changing people's mind and so on. So where are we? So end of 25, we have quite a lot of teams in production, Yesterday when I updated the presentation, it was 116. Today it was 117. So that means that there are quite a lot of teams. So 20% increase since last year. So we're not really seeing the hockey stick anymore because there aren't 2,000 teams. So that's going to have an upper limit. When it comes to applications in production, this building block core experience and work at 567. So that's quite a lot of them as well. 25% increase. So you see a bit higher increase in number of applications, which is kind of normal based on how teams previous year started onboarding and just putting out more applications. I don't want this figure to grow too much because it's always with microservices, are you building them too small or not? Because there are things you need to manage and operate, and also all the dependencies and everything else. But so far looks good. Deployments this year, it's ticking and ticking and ticking. So up until 1.5 hours ago, it was 38,432. I remember the first time we said, oh, how many deployments should we actually have for target this year? The first year was 2,000. We got 2,500. This year, we predicted 30,000 and we lost. So it's an 82% increase. So this is actually showing that the culture is changing, that deployment, small and frequent, is a thing. So not looking at team and application, it's still 82% increase. And this is the scary number for most people. That's a lot of pull requests. But don't be worried, because the Renovate bot has actually opened 961 of them, which is one of the things that if you're not using Renovate bot or similar things to push dependencies update automatically to each and every developer, that is a key to be pushing things. You get people following the latest version, don't get a massive upgrade after 5 years, continuously doing the maintenance. It's still a lot of pull request code reviews that happens, even if we take out just the dependency updates. Also had an all-time high in number of requests per second through the Andromeda platform. During peak in November, 29,099 requests per second in total. But once again, coming back to the, like we are pushing, keep your application up to date, do small deployment continuously. The Renovate bot is pushing you to update. So if you look at the Java versions, so December 24, Java 23 was actually the winner. And that's not a long-term support, but pushing the latest thing that people can experiment and try. Java 21 was their LTS at that point in time, and then there was some laggers that hadn't moved off from Java 22 to 23. Now it actually looks like most are in Java 25, that's LTS, and we see there are still some laggers haven't moved from the old 24, and we still have a few that hasn't left the old LTS, and that will be deprecated in 6 months from the platform side, and Java 24 is the same, so they need to push themselves up. So this means that people are upgrading. Yeah, not just latest Java version, it's the best pushing and upgrading the application dependencies, and that's why we kind of see that it doesn't take long for any code changes to come to production. This is the start page of the documentation site where you can get started. And there is a reason why the start page actually showed this type of statistics. You can fight on trying to be the latest deploy. Now I actually managed to find today that it was the mobile app Baltic team that actually deployed something. Yeah. So be very open with the statistics, pushing the good storytelling. And here we can see the savings backend team that had the 300 deployments during 1 month. They have so far this month only 214, so they are lagging a bit. And it's soon Christmas, so they will not end up in 300 this time. But you can see since 1.5 hours was 165 deployments in production as total. On average business days, it's around 150. And that's quite heavily growing every month as well. But if you look at just 25. But coming to what have we learned? As a platform, you should listen to your consumers, but don't accept everything. Because the problem here, if you have 117 teams, they will not align on the things. Therefore, you need to take decision and you need to have opinions. What is the good for the bigger audience and not one single team. Developer experience isn't equal to total freedom, because then you will not get the scale. Then there is not really a need. Still, developer experience should leave you open so you as a software engineers can do your practices and not tie down. And it's a really hard balance between those two. And that's a continuous discussion. Another thing, understand the need people are having before you choose tools. Happens quite often. Oh, that tools, that's amazing. Let's invent a need for it. And that's the same for the platform team and other team. The platform team need to take responsibility pushing the culture of the consumers. It's really, really important. Otherwise, the consumers will work as they always done. And you need to push the values that you're standing behind on the platform. Being a platform provider is hard but fun. That's definitely things I hear from the team. It's a lot of challenging, but also it's on a scale now that it's become very, very interesting from a software engineering perspective, definitely. Becoming successful as a platform, it will overrun your backlog very, very quickly. And that's actually one of the issues that the platform team are having at the moment. They have so much in the backlog, so many demands, and they have a bit of a problematic to be able to deliver everything that people would like. Which was nice to see that at least there were some pull requests coming from the community back to the platform services. And that's also encouraged, and you should encourage that type of things. And another thing that tends to be an interesting figure is like when you start with building up a new platform, the ratio between platform engineers and the software engineers building on top of that platform will look really bad, because you might just have 1 or 2 teams starting as a pilot. Now in Andromeda, it's more or less 1 platform engineer supports around 20 developers in production. So that's the ratio we see where we kind of landed. Because we have been needing to scale up the platform team based on the teams that are coming. So that's around where we are. And that's actually it. So if you want the slides, it's actually up on GitHub. It's just built with a framework called SlideDev, and Claude Code assisted me heavily on creating it. Thank you.